Hi everyone, my name is Brittany. Welcome back to my channel. And today I'll be reading 3 very famous romances for my yearly reading vlog, Operation Valentine.
It's Brittany, bitch.
So number 1, we moved into our new place here in North Carolina. I still have not figured out what I want to do for my backgrounds. I've kind of been switching it up. I ideally would like to take down that TV mount. I don't think I'm ever going to use it and put up like a little green thing on the wall. So maybe that would be a better background. But if you like any of these backgrounds, just let me know because I still haven't decided. I'm still popping around my room to see what I feel like. And number 2, Operation Valentine originally started a few years ago as motivation for me to read romance novels because I used to love romance novels a lot when I was younger. And then as I've gotten older, I have gotten back into romance novels. So now reading romance isn't as much of a chore as it used to be, and I actually read it more than any other genre, I feel like, in the last year or so. But regardless, I'm still gonna do my Operation Valentine because I think it's just something that I like to do on my channel that's just really fun for me, and it challenges me to read famous books that I may otherwise not pick up for a reading vlog. One of those books I'll be reading is The Bromance Book Club, which is a very famous romance novel that a lot of booktubers have really enjoyed. They've given it 4 or 5 stars. This whole book centers around this very famous baseball player who finds out that his wife has been faking her orgasms their entire marriage. And their marriage kind of comes to a halt and she wants a divorce, and he's trying to figure out how to save his marriage, but also get over the fact that she's been faking their entire marriage together. Not just their orgasms, but her life dreams. She hasn't been confiding in him, all these different things. So this is a really interesting concept for romance, and that's kind of why I put it in here because otherwise, like, it's not really something that I think I would enjoy. I'm not a big sports fan. I mean, that's a lie. I do like some sports, but in terms of like reading a sports romance, I know it's really a thing for a lot of people like Chandler, but I'm not a really big fan of sports in my books. So I'm not really sure I'm going to feel about this, but I really wanted to put it in here because it's a very famous one. I found it on audio, which works perfectly because I've really not been reading any physical books lately in the last couple of months. So found the audio, it works perfectly. I'm popping it in here. One of the other books I'm reading is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. This book I know is not a romance. I know that it's basically about domestic violence, wrapped up in a love triangle, to my understanding, but this book is not that interesting to me other than the fact that everybody's freaking read it. And whenever my upstairs neighbor ended up reading it, I was like, you know what? This book's going around to everybody. I just need to buckle up and do it. This is a perfect opportunity to force myself to read this very famous romance and see if I actually like it, because I did enjoy one of Colleen Hoover's other books. I enjoyed Verity, but it was kind of more of a mystery, and most of her books are romances specifically, so I kind of wanted to give this one a shot because I think it's her most famous one and see how I feel about it. I'm not really excited about reading about domestic violence, especially when it's romanticized, but to my understanding, it's kind of based off of her childhood, watching her mother go through an abusive relationship. So I kind of like that realism in there. So I'm interested to read this. Am I excited? Not really, but I am very curious to see why so many people gave this book 5 stars. Like, so many people that I follow, like 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars, without a doubt. Even as recently as 2 years ago, they gave this book 5 stars. So I have high hopes for it, but I'm trying to reduce any expectations. And the first book I'll be starting with, which is The Duke and I, which is the first in the Bridgerton series by Julia Quinn. This has been turned into a very famous Netflix show, and I'm already 50% of the way into this book. I started it, honestly, like 3 weeks ago, but I'm having a hard time with it. I kind of stopped because I was getting a little bit bored. So each one of the books in the series follows a different love story between the siblings and somebody else. So this first one covers Daphne and Simon, and I've already seen the Netflix show. I already know what happens, but I really wanted to actually visit the material and see if I like the actual original book. So far, I'm finding it a little boring. I'm not enjoying all the characters. I feel like all of the characters are kind of flat in this, and I feel like the TV show is definitely doing them more justice, but we'll see. Daphne has all of her siblings, and she basically enters into this agreement with the Duke that they're going to pretend that they're like courting, so then she will stop being bothered, and so will he. So it basically kind of gets everybody off of their backs from society. They think that they are courting, but then it actually turns into kind of like a tryst. And then her brother is like threatening him that he has to marry his sister or he's gonna have a duel. What a weird concept, but I'm 50% of the way into this. I'm hoping to finish this next couple of days. Yeah, I don't know. I've never really been a big fan of Simon and Daphne in general. And I feel like they were definitely the weakest book of Bridgerton because I just don't really care for them at all as people. I don't really find them very interesting. I don't find them very compelling. I don't really like them at all. So for them as a romance, I'm like, cool. And then of course we know that there is a sexual assault later in the book where Daphne assaults Simon, and they kept it in the TV show. And a lot of people were hoping they were gonna take it out, but they didn't. I already know what's supposed to happen. Let's see if something else unfolds. I'm really curious to see if I'm actually gonna enjoy the romance at the end. We're gonna gonna fuck around and find out.
Maybe I've been going nowhere lately. It's time to start all over and go for it. 'Cause they don't even know me yet. But that's something I don't regret. Every night I close my eyes and see only lavender dreams, baby. What can I do when a million things are running through?
Please disregard any outside noises. I have my window open because it's quite nice and hot here. It's in the 70s, even though tomorrow's gonna be 30 degrees, so that's fun. Anyway, I ended up finishing The Duke and and I really don't know how to feel about this book. This book is gonna get 2 stars from me. I wasn't expecting it to be that low, but I actually find this quite boring. And then on top of that, this book is very famous for its very obvious sexual assault scene towards the end of the book, and it completely ruins any sense of romance that there was. We're following the love story of Daphne and Simon, who are, to me, both very unlikable characters in and of themselves, and together they're just kind of a little bit of a toxic mess, in my personal opinion. I really like the cast of characters. I like the idea of Bridgerton. I like the whole Lady Whistledown thing, but I just really wasn't sold on the characters themselves. And even for the first season, like, I really wasn't that into the pairing of Daphne and Simon. I just feel like the actors did a much better job than the book. The show, for me, far surpasses the book. It's one of those rare moments where the book is not better than the TV show. It's definitely a bit of a shame, but at the same time, like, sometimes you need an on-screen adaptation to actually add nuance to the story, and that's exactly what the story is lacking. It's lacking any nuance. There's no chemistry for me. I mean, they do, of course, have a very witty banter, but I just feel like their relationship turned into instant love in 2 hot seconds, and I never really felt the romance. I think that's probably why for book 2 they went more for like the whole angst thing, because I prefer more of an angsty romance personally, and I just found their relationship very lukewarm, and I just didn't really care. Daphne is so selfish and manipulative and naive, and it's just like, it's to the point where it's like frustrating, and then Simon is this like brutally broken, brooding man who just thinks that nobody's ever gonna love him, and he's always trying to prove his father wrong because his father was a fucking asshole. It just, they almost are like caught up in their own issues too much to like be a couple. And then even as a couple, after like 2 weeks, she's like demanding to know everything about his fucking life, and she just like really forces his hand on everything. And like, this is one of those stories I feel like could have gone over a longer amount of time. But at the same time, this book was already way too fucking long for what actually happened in this book. It was way too fucking long. But I will have to say, I think I would have enjoyed this book a little bit more if I didn't listen to the audio, because I have now realized I do not like the very famous audiobook narrator, Rosalind Landor. She narrates a lot of historical novels, and I've noticed that all the audiobooks I've listened to that she's narrated, I tend not to like. And I can tell that I like the writing. I really don't like her narration. I know that she's so popular and so famous for that very reason. The thing about her voice narrating like a young couple in love just doesn't really work for me. Her voice, to me, would be the perfect example of a Lady Whistledown. Like, if she just narrated that part, it'd be totally fine because she fits that perfectly. But like, narrating the whole story, I can't connect with her voice. I just don't find it romantic. I can't get into the story. Something about it just doesn't work for me. So I think if I attempt any more historical novels, which I probably will, I definitely cannot listen to her audio narration, which is really frustrating because I feel like I'm gonna miss out on some books that may only have her, and maybe I will have to just deal with it. But she definitely takes everything down by like a star or 2. Like, I really just don't like her voice. But on top of that whole thing, once we get to like the 70% mark, they've been married, and Daphne obviously finds out that Simon doesn't want to have children. It's not that he can't have children. So whenever he's really drunk, she coerces him into having sex, and then she doesn't let him pull out. And it was a very traumatic scene, I feel like, to read in the book. It was already pretty bad in the TV show, which a lot of people were hoping they were going to cut it out in the TV show, and they didn't. But I just feel like in both senses, she was never held accountable for literally raping her husband. Like, I just feel like it's a really disgusting thing to have happened. I think that's why this book has so many polarizing reviews, because a lot of people like myself, like, I can't root for the romance where one of the partners rapes the other. I just, it doesn't work for me. I find it really gross. I just immediately think you're a trash person. And the whole book seems to fucking like put her on this moral high ground of like, she was in the right for doing that because he lied to her about being able to have children. He already told her they couldn't have children, and she just assumed it's because something was wrong with him. but he just didn't want to have children. This whole book just didn't really work for me in that sense. I think it's funny because it's such a weak book in a series to be the first book. Like, why was this the first book? I just feel like this was like, should have been like the 6th or 7th novel that nobody fucking read. Does that make sense? Anyway, I'm gonna fill you in when I get to 50% in the Bromance Book Club, which is my next book I'm gonna attempt. So I'm looking forward to the Bromance Book Club. I think it'll be a good time. I think it'll at least be a fun, easy listen. It sounds like a good time. I hope so, because I'm really hoping to actually get this out to you guys by Valentine's Day, if I can even do it.
Sometimes my mind is away. I drift into space, don't know where to go. Sometimes I think I'm okay. I'm feeling the same. My reasons are gone. Say my name, 'cause baby I'm falling. Yeah, I'm falling, falling. So won't you say my name? 'Cause baby I'm falling. Yeah, I'm falling, falling for you. Falling for you. Falling for you. I'm falling for you. These are the days I cherish every moment. I won't take my life for granted.
Peep Kalinka, but I want to let you guys know that I actually finished the Bromance Book Club without consulting you, because on Friday I got to 50% and then my landlords came over and kind of like ruined me filming. Like that whole time I wanted to film, they were over here doing some work on the house, which was really helpful, but in terms of me actually getting stuff done, not related to the house, didn't happen. And today is Monday, February 13th, so Valentine's Day is tomorrow, but I did at least finish this book today, so that's good. Long story short, I think I'm gonna give this book 4 stars and round it up that way. I actually really enjoyed this. I think if I had updated you at the 50% mark anyway, I would have given you a much different answer, because I really wasn't enjoying it up to the 50% mark. I just feel like I never got invested. I didn't really like the characters. It just really wasn't working out for me. And it didn't really feel like a romance. It just felt like a fiction novel. It didn't feel like a romance specifically at that point. I mean, this second chance romance has such an interesting premise where, you know, Gavin is this hotshot MLB player and he just found out his wife, Thea, has been faking her orgasms the entire marriage. Thea wants a divorce, and then Gavin turns to his buddies and they help him by introducing him to the Bromance Book Club, or they don't even call it that, but they call it their book club, where they read romances and try to understand their women and try to fix their marriages, which I think is a really cool premise in and of itself. I wish more guys did this. I think it's a really beautiful thing. I think that was really cool to read romance novels and try to understand their ladies. This book also points out a lot of things about how, like, when women actually enjoy something, like, all of a sudden it's made fun of, especially like teenage girls and stuff. You know, if they like a celebrity or something, all of a sudden like that celebrity is like uncool or cliche because all the teenage girls like them. It's the same thing with like pumpkin spice lattes, which is brought up in this novel, which I thought was a really poignant point of view. That pumpkin spice lattes are like cliche and ridiculous because women tend to like them, but one of the guys like unabashedly drinks them and they're like his favorite drink. So I really like those little inclusions of feminism that didn't really feel like it was beating you over the head with it, but was a really good point. And I actually really enjoyed all the male characters in this. My issues were with the female characters. I didn't really like Thea or her sister Liv. Thea just like blamed every single fucking problem in their marriage on Gavin, even though she's the one for like 3 years who never told him that he wasn't sexually satisfying her. She wanted to go back to school. She didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom. She didn't want to be a wag anymore. She didn't want to do any of these things. She didn't want to be associated with anymore, and she didn't tell him. And she expects him to be a mind reader. And it's like, it's a problem that I see with a lot of couples in general, but it was really, really frustrating to see this playing out on the page. And I say that metaphorically because obviously I listened to this audiobook because all these are audiobooks, but I was just so fucking frustrated with Thea because she was constantly like blaming everything on Gavin. And I feel like she, out of the pair, had more work to do, like by tenfold. Like she had so much emotional work. She really should go see a therapist. Like she really, really needs help because she was just constantly blaming every fucking issue on Gavin, acting like he was the bad guy, even though he didn't know. And she was like, well, how did you not know? And I'm like, well, if you've been faking it the entire time, he wouldn't know what a real orgasm was, which is exactly what happened whenever they had sex one time at this game and she actually came. And that's what this whole issue started. And then I was just so frustrated with her sister Liv, who was just constantly trying to get them to fucking like break up. Like every time they started getting closer together, she was just like getting in between them, like trying to get her away from him. And I'm like, he's not a bad guy. He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't know he wasn't pleasing you. He didn't handle it very well. I'll give him that. But like that makes him a human being. He didn't handle it very well. And he just kind of sulked around for a while because he didn't really know what else to do. He was very, very upset. His ego was hurt. And I'm not defending the dude for not pleasing his woman, but at the same time, if he doesn't know he's not actually doing it and he is a really sexually inexperienced guy, how would he know? In certain parts of this, I really just like wish that Gavin would just like leave her ass and find somebody else because he was a really good father. He actually really cared. And like the amount of attention that he put into trying to save their marriage was like really, really cool to see. It was really beautiful. And I actually really rooted for them because of that. And that's why I like the ending. It was very sweet and saccharine. It was over the top, lovey-dovey, but it kind of worked for what was going on here. And I actually really supported it because I really supported Gavin in his endeavors and I wanted him to succeed. I mean, fuck Thea, she can suck my ass, but I still root for them as a couple. We also got to read little snippets of the historical book that they were reading in the book club. I think that was really cool. And the historical guy in the book was kind of like in Gavin's head, like as his conscience. And I thought it was just really funny. Anyway, that is my lowdown on the Bromance Book Club. I really enjoyed it. I rounded it up to 4 stars. I mean, the reason I gave it 3.5 stars in general is I just really did not like Thea that much. Like she was just so frustrating as a character that I just couldn't get behind the relationship 100%. But in the end, I really rooted for them and how they reconnected their sex lives and became intimate again. Now on to the book I've kind of been dreading the most. So on to It Ends With Us. And am I excited about this book? No. Honestly, I'm a little dreading it. But since tomorrow is Valentine's Day and I'm going to try to attempt this, we're just going to go for it. So I have a pretty free schedule at work tomorrow. So as soon as I start work, I'm going to go ahead and start listening to this. And I really hope it lives up to the hype. Honestly, most of the people that I follow have listed this as 5 stars. And I just find it a little shocking because I'm already 15% of the way into this book. Listen, I would have DNF'd it by now. Like I want to put it down so bad just because the writing is terrible and I'm seeing red flags everywhere. I know this isn't technically a romance. It's just kind of ridiculous right now, you guys. I just don't understand like how this got published. I just feel like it's not even good. Like I really, in the first chapter, our main character, Lily Blossom Bloom, yeah, she meets this dude who was like aggressively beating a patio chair and then commanded her to get off of a ledge. 2 red flags for me. I wouldn't even talk to this dude. Starts talking to this guy. He comes on to her really sexually and is just like, I want to fuck you. Cool. I think this is supposed to be the guy. His name is Ryle. He's the one I think is going to be the abusive relationship in her life, and the other guy, Atlas, is not the abusive one, but I could be wrong because I haven't really paid attention to a lot of reviews and stuff. I kind of wanted to kind of go in as blind as I can, even though knowing it's about like domestic violence and isn't like a true romance. But Atlas seems to be this like homeless kid that she grew up with because she helped him out and he took her virginity. So I think that's kind of where Atlas comes in. But he so far seems like a good noodle. Ryle's getting me red flags off the bat. Like right off the bat, this dude, 2 red flags. And then talking about how he's like all about success and money and doesn't care about other people, like red flag number 3. I just feel like it's so easy to see. I'm just not having it. And also this girl writes fucking like journal entries to Ellen, okay? And I feel like so far it's so fucking laughable. I know it takes a very serious note later on, but like right now, like this book is a fucking joke. I don't understand how it has such high ratings. I don't understand how it like won the best romance. Like I so far am shocked because if I was in the library and I just picked this book up, I would have put it back on the shelf at this point. I would have put it back after the first chapter, which was just like eye-rolling worthy. It's just not doing it for me. I think the writing is also like really juvenile. And I know I liked her writing actually when I read Verity. I gave it like 3-4 stars. But for some reason in this, it's really not working. Maybe it's because it's supposed to be all about the relationships and Verity was more about like a mystery. This is not working for me. So I'm hoping it finishes by tomorrow. And that's my goal. And tomorrow we're gonna make a really lovely steak dinner. And it's gonna be a great ass time because Valentine's Day should be a day that's celebrated. I'm not sure about you guys, but like I've never had a Valentine and I kind of love it because it's always like worked out where I was never with somebody on Valentine's Day, and it's great because I treat myself and I've always loved it. I get myself chocolates, I get myself flowers, I have a lovely steak dinner. It's all about me. Me. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to finish this fucking book by tomorrow, and I think I can do it, but so far it's not really looking good. I'm just kind of like unimpressed with what people are giving 5 stars to. Just no.
Maybe it's too soon. Yeah, you know we just met. What I got to lose? Gonna send the address. I don't like to wait, so you better not leave me on red. No, not tonight. Cause I'm over with some friends and I'm over sending texts and I need to feel you here tonight. And I know you're home alone,
So it's Valentine's Day and I ended up finishing It Ends With Us, but I really don't know how to feel about this book and I think I'm gonna need a night to think on it. So I already did release my moving vlog for my whole move from New Mexico to North Carolina today, so I feel like I should at least wait a day anyway for this vlog. Even though originally I like to try to have it come out on Valentine's Day, I feel like this is not really a good idea. I feel like I need a night to think on this book. So I'll get back to you guys tomorrow about how I feel about it and then publish this vlog. So I do apologize for it being a day later than I anticipated, but I did technically finish the book on Valentine's Day, so yay me. And now we're gonna enjoy our steak dinner and I'm gonna think about this novel. Okay guys, it's actually a few days later because I just got incredibly busy and I'm so sorry. But I did end up finishing this book on Valentine's Day and I really don't understand all the 5-star ratings for this book. I'm like genuinely shocked at how bad this book is and that people actually enjoyed this novel as like not a joke. So let me explain a little bit about this. Obviously it's a book about domestic violence. It has a very serious topic. However, I just feel like this entire book was a fucking joke. Like everything about this book felt like a really bad, like dark cartoon. It was just like, I don't know, it was like almost camp. Like I don't understand this book and how people like genuinely take it fucking serious. Like I really don't. I knew this book wasn't a romance. It dealt with domestic violence, but like this book was just, I don't even know how to describe this book to you. I don't even know what the fuck I would categorize it as other than a fucking joke. I was so unprepared for this book because I was really preparing myself for a very serious subject. I didn't think it was gonna be so fucking laughable. I almost feel like it does a disservice. Actually, I'm not gonna lie. It does do a disservice to any other book out there talking about domestic violence because this to me made a total fucking joke of it because this book was so unserious. Our main character's name is Lily Blossom Bloom and she's a florist. Okay, so that's just really ridiculous and laughable. Okay, it's not something I'd want to put in a serious novel. Okay, even if it is about my own parents' domestic violence, unless that was your mom's name or something and you're actually giving her like, you know, justification, but it's not because I already looked. Okay, and Lily is obsessed with Ellen, so she writes journal entries to Ellen DeGeneres and then proceeds to even name her daughter after Dory. I don't even know how to talk to you about this. I don't even know how to bring this up in a respectful manner because why would you have such a serious novel with such serious topics, themes, tropes, and your main character is a joke by themselves? Her name is Lily Blossom Bloom. She owns a flower shop and she loves gardening and she's like obsessed with Ellen, like obsessed to the point where like I feel like Ellen was like a fourth fucking character and it was just so weird. And I think on top of that, the writing style is so fucking juvenile in this that it literally felt like really bad fan fiction of another serious book about domestic violence. That's the best way I can think to describe this book to you. There's also a lot of like uncomfy / like ick moments that I just don't understand why we ever even believe that Lily would want to be with Ryle. Like the minute she meets this man, he's a walking red flag. I have no idea how everyone thinks he's this charming, charismatic dude because honestly, from the very first page, it was like red flag, like everywhere. Oh no. Number one, a few sentences into this book, there's a joke about suicide. I just don't feel like that was really well done. Oh, and then like in the same chapter, one of the reasons that Ryle like yells at her to get off of the roof is because some guy accidentally fell off and killed himself, and then they joked about like I hope he got a good shot on his fucking camera. Didn't sit well with me. Just kind of uncomfortable. Ew. Oh, and by the way, this book opens up with Ryle beating the shit out of a fucking patio chair, and then she was like, wow, I really want to talk to this guy. If I saw some dude going off on a patio chair, I'm leaving the scene. I'm not gonna be associated with that. He's obviously emotionally unstable. Overall, probably, but at the moment, definitely. So I would definitely not fuck with that. I would absolutely have fled the scene the minute I saw some random ass dude on a rooftop kicking a fucking chair and beating the shit out of it. Red flag and uncomfortable. And then when they're having this meeting on the rooftop, he talks about how he only does one night stands. He's a neurosurgeon and he wants to fuck the shit out of her. He literally says how much he wants to fuck her so bad, and it's like laughable. Like, why would I root for this romance when this dude is so unhinged and then talks about fucking you after you just beat the shit out of a patio chair? Oh, and then he's smoking weed and then he gets called into work and doesn't like say, I'm sorry, I'm inebriated, and he's a neurosurgeon. Again, I feel like this is a joke. Why would you ever want to show that? Like, why would you ever want to show that like a doctor, a neurosurgeon who's operating on your brain should be smoking weed and then going into work? I don't know what the fuck Colleen Hoover was like on while she's writing this, but like I'm genuinely concerned. Okay, and then later on in the book, not that much later, but Ryle literally knocks, like he knows where her apartment was. He literally knocked on like almost 30 fucking doors to find her, to fuck her, because he had to fuck her so bad. And then when he does find her apartment, he literally falls on his fucking knees and begs her to fuck him. That is so fucking weird and cringe on so many levels, but especially as like the main love interest in our story. What the fuck? What were you thinking? Oh, and later on, we find out the picture that Ryle took of her when they first met, which is, again, really fucking weird. He blew up the picture and put it on his fucking wall in his house. Like, how do you all not see these red flags? I mean, this man is literally a walking red flag. Everything about him is saying run away. I don't understand how anyone thinks he's charismatic or believable at all, even the character. I feel like this whole thing is ridiculous. Like, there's no way that I can believe that even someone named Lily Blossom Bloom that's obsessed with Ellen is going to fuck with this dude. I just don't understand. Why would you do this to yourself? Okay, aside from the glaring issues in this novel, I think my biggest problem was this didn't really feel like a real book. It didn't even feel like real life. It didn't feel like a book. It felt like I was reading like someone's translation of a fan fiction of a domestic violence novel. I just feel like this whole thing just didn't work. Something about the writing, I didn't care for a single character. I didn't care. I wasn't invested. I wasn't interested. I feel like the story was honestly so boring, and they just had some serious topics in it, along with these weird laughable moments that just made no sense. And they weren't like comic relief or something. They were like laughably cringe and like secondhand embarrassment at the fact for like I wanted to like eat my phone. Like, it was just really uncomfortable. It's just gross and it doesn't make any sense. And I feel like this writing just kind of sucked. Like, I really enjoyed Verity. I thought it was fine and I liked it. But this book, like, the writing took like a severe downhill for me. Okay, there's other glaring issues, but one of the things I want to talk about too is that I do have a real respect for people that think this has like a valuable message, but I just disagree. I just feel like if you're gonna read a book about domestic violence, make it any other book but this, because this book does it so fucking poorly. But I just also feel like every other aspect of this book was handled poorly as well. It's not like it was actually a good book, but the domestic violence part of it wasn't handled in a way that I preferred or wasn't safe or whatever. Like, the whole book as a whole is just bad. The whole book, honestly, is probably one of the worst books I've ever read, and I still have no idea how the fuck I even finished it. And I'm so glad I had the audio because I probably wouldn't have otherwise. So you should definitely know that Coho left a author's note at the beginning and the end of this book. The end of this book really explained that Ryle and Lily's relationship mirrored that of her own parents, which is why she had to make the decisions that they did. You know, which, number one, by the way, I think is really toxic in general. And I understand that that's your personal life and that's fine to base off of your parents' experience. But I would have just preferred that she had changed the narrative, you know? So her mom obviously decided to leave her father when she was very young, which was a great choice, but she still let him see the kids, right? And that's the same thing that Lily does in this as well. Even though the man is abusive and he definitely is probably gonna hurt the fucking kid, she's like, go ahead, like, I'm not gonna like cut off access for your daughter, which, you know, in a way I can respect, but it's not like he just cheated on you and you had a disagreement. I mean, the man is abusive, and I think that Coho got really lucky, I'm just gonna say. In my personal experience and in the experience of people around me that have had issues with domestic violence and family violence, every person in my entire life that has ever dealt with abuse, the parent also hurts the child. So the fact that Coho's dad didn't hurt her is literally an anomaly. And I feel like it's very hurtful and harmful to young minds reading this, thinking that his behavior is okay just because Coho's dad didn't hurt them as kids and just hurt her mom, and then her mom left him and then they were fine after that. That is not the story for the 99% of the people out there. I'm just gonna tell you right now, like, I've never met a single person who had that happen to them. I haven't experienced that myself. I haven't seen it happen in any other person's life. I just don't feel like think it's that common. I think that's why this can be a really harmful story, and I really would have preferred if she would have changed the narrative and at least had Ryle pay for his consequences, you know? Maybe lose his job, maybe, you know, get reported for at work, something like that, right? A restraining order, go back to the court and get full custody, things like that. Like, I just really was expecting him to have actual consequences, and also maybe for her to become like an advocate or something for domestic violence and help other women. And I don't know, I just wanted it more of like an empowering thing for her, and I just feel like her deciding to divorce him was obviously a good choice that mirrored her mother's, but of course she also let him in the child's life like Coho's mother, which is still a really bad choice. I would never let an abusive person around my child ever. That's also just based off of my personal experience, because they will harm the child. They would, even just to spite the mother, they will harm the child. So I think that's just a really poor look into domestic violence. I mean, I'm sure there's more cases out there like Coho's. I just feel like they're quite rare, especially for how popular this book is. I feel like the harm it could do is much greater than the good it's done. Also, as like a complete side note, Atlas is the other like love person in this fucking book. I don't even know why he's in this book, honestly. I just feel like he didn't do anything other than make Ryle jealous later on and whatnot. And I liked seeing how he was like a homeless kid that Lily helped when she was younger, but it just didn't really work for the story. And then on top of that, he was 18 and she was 15 when they fucked. And that is statutory rape, and I'm not here for it. So I was really uncool with that. And also in the book, it literally said it's 2.5 12.5 years, it's fine. So I'm really not okay with that. I just feel like Colleen Hoover stuff is really problematic. And I feel like in Verity, it wasn't, they were adults. And so I think I just didn't care as much, but especially because it's dealt with some like young adult with young teenagers and a lot of these aspects and children. And it also dealt with like such a dark subject matter. I just feel like this book is just so toxic and problematic. Like that's the only way I can think to describe it. I have no idea how so many people I follow gave this 4 and 5 stars. Like I actually want to call them out. I don't feel like getting in a fight today, but I'm just absolutely shocked at people that gave this 4 and 5 stars. I think it's very poorly done. That's just my opinion. I know my opinions are a little polarizing, but I also come from a lot of my own personal experiences. And I think the problem is this book is so fucking famous that I'm just like scared of the damage it could do. Like I know if the wrong kid reads this, they're gonna grow up and have a relationship just fucking like this, because I used to be that kind of a person. When I was younger, you know, when you deal with abuse and stuff in your own life and your brain is fucking developing, when you read this shit, it's fucking bad for you. So I would just say this is an absolute pass. This is a no. If you're ever thinking about picking up this book, like don't do it, because I did not pick it up for years on purpose, and I decided to give it a try because the second book fucking came out, which I will not be reading. So do I regret it? Yeah, a little bit, but I'm also glad because maybe this will help somebody to not pick it up and not harm their mental psyche. So anyway, I hope you guys all have a really fabulous day. Thank you so much for waiting around for this vlog, and I hope you guys all have a very, very wonderful weekend, day, afternoon, whatever it is, and I'll talk to you guys all very soon. Bye.